morning in Lagos, it felt like it was a little drizzle on my way to work this morning.
Yeah, we actually witnessed the rain in my zone apparently last night. So,
Oh, yeah, yes, it did.
yeah, because
Yes,
it
it did.
rained yesterday, and so it might also just rain sometime later.
Still, I mean, I think I said it yesterday. It's still a little shocking to see it raining that heavy in the month of October. But
That's because let's just.
of course, lots of other conversations, mostly centered around the NSAS protests, and that's our top trend in this morning. In the last 20 days, there have been online conversations about a memorial and, of course, a remembrance of those people who lost their lives, all through last year, and those who lost their lives particularly during the protest last year. It started, of course, in Delta State, where yet another person had been a victim of police brutality, and that eventually spurred, numerous conversations online, mostly on Twitter, that led to maybe the biggest protest Nigeria has seen in a very, very long time, that eventually ended somehow, some way, on the streets on the 20th of October in 2020. The conversations have centered mostly around the gains and, of course, the failure of government to actually do something and to show some level of accountability as to what happened in the month of October, all through the month of October last year. Not just on the 20th, and I think our conversations are going to be centered throughout the month of October last year, and eventually on the night of the 20th of October 2020. And we spoke a little bit about this yesterday. What level of accountability has the government shown? How different is police? Have some level of reforms. In what ways have the police officers who err, being able to be made accountable for their actions? And it doesn't seem like a lot has changed. That really is what has led to more of these conversations this year. I drove past the toll gate this morning, and I've been driving past the toll gate every day, and there's an increased level of police presence there again this morning, mostly to prevent people from gathering or to prevent any type of protest. And I also saw a message saying that the Lagos State Police is saying that they would only allow online protests, and of course protests from home, which I really don't even understand.
What it means to protest online.
Yeah, yes, you can have conversations online. You can't necessarily protest online. There's other ways, that you can, have some level of protest. But, I think it's also important to know that the police itself cannot, give orders whether there should be a protest or not. They're not the ones. It should be the government. And, of course, there's still a court ruling that says that you don't need to even seek permission from government before a protest is held. So, the events for today, I'm sure they're going to be very interesting. I want to see how they play out. We're going to have having a correspondent on ground at the toll gate to also give us a live feed and give us some reports as to what exactly played out over there, or is playing out there.
It's more of an irony, if you ask me. The fact that we have increased presence of, security forces around, one would rather think that the fact that you have this persons on ground should be to protect, because that's the way it is. Now, let's not forget that during the protest, one of the narrative that was being pushed was that, yes, it was hijacked. But why should a protest be hijacked? Because on normal day, in a normal day or during normal circumstances, you are expected to have the police, you're expected to have protection, you're expected to have that this protest should not go wrong, and that's where the police comes in. So it's really funny, and it is really an irony to say and to know and to see that you have presence of, security forces just to ensure that the protest doesn't really happen. In a democratic dispensation, it calls for a lot of concern. It really, really calls for a lot of concern. Now, protest is a tool. It's a universal tool, if you like to say, that has been used over the years in different countries, to get government to act, to respond to the demands of the citizens. And so it wouldn't be different. This is not the first time. I would even rather say that, we're actually embracing this, it's rather late than never, right? Because we have a lot of people who have gone ahead of us. And we have seen that some of these countries have actually gotten, several results. So why are we different? What's going on with us?
I think it's mostly the Nigerian government's attitude towards opposition, or attitude towards anyone who disagrees with them. And it's not just for protesting now. Even people, on separate different political parties, people who have counter arguments concerning the Nigerian government, anything whatsoever that the Nigerian government feels like they choose to do, they have a particular attitude towards anybody who has completely discerning arguments about it. And that's what eventually has translated into some of all of this. And it's also showing really the attitude of the Nigerian police itself towards the respect to the fundamental human rights of the Nigerian citizen. They have completely forgotten, what their responsibility should be and the roles that they should have in society. And this, covers every single ramification. If you've been to a police station, if you've had discussions with the police, if you've been stopped at a checkpoint, every single, way that you can describe, you can really tell that they really almost don't have any idea what their responsibilities should be and how, they should always be able to respect the rights of the Nigerian that they are paid to protect. And so, that's what eventually plays out here.
So you begin to ask the question of how many times you have training and retraining. And I'm sure that, one of the major reasons, because if you also look at the internet and the discussion that's been going on for the past, 20 days up until this moment, you'll find that one of the discourse is the fact that people are asking that, the police, there should be a reform in the system. And the reform, apart from the fact that they're asking, yes, scrap a particular arm, which is, that of the SARS, but necessarily they're saying, if you look at the condition of the Nigerian police, I mean, if you look at the welfare, just look at a typical police officer. It doesn't really look good. I mean, first of all, you ask, how are they faring? I have been to the barracks, where these people reside. And it's really nothing to really write home about. It's not something to be proud of. And so these are some of the concerns that Nigerians actually, took to the streets on, on behalf of the police. And so I'm wondering why they do not understand the narrative and all of this is actually going on. Now, it also brings us back to the question of when people begin to campaign, because the elections are here again. 2023 is very close. As much as we say, 2023 is very far off, but it's very close. I'm asking, what conversations are we having? What are we talking about? What leaders are we looking up to? Because it's high time we begin to understand that we need to elect leaders who would represent our interests, not leaders who would feel that, when they get into the office, everything that they say we begin to take them for what they say.
Yeah.
So this is the time we begin to have all of this conversation. It is really, really sad, and it saddens me. Today is usually, every time I look at the news and I look at all of those clips, I get very emotional, really, really emotional.
I saw
I'm hoping that
CNN report, that was put, I think it was 2 days ago, where a woman was saying, that her son died in her arms. She had gone to the, I'm not sure if you saw that. She had gone there the next morning to Tollgate the next morning. But, like Sheun Kuti said sometime last year, he in for would, treat you like dirt if you ever find ways of carrying out criminal justice acts. But I have no business with, talking about, you go fix their barracks. That's their personal problem. And as adults, they should be able to campaign for themselves and say, we demand better living conditions. We demand better pay. It's not the same people that you have been abusing, that you still, look at the Tollgate this morning.
So much of destruction, it's been used, to actually do a lot of crime, commit a lot of crime. And
the reason. The narrative was put up for a reason to... they say if you want to kill a dog, you give a dog a bad name, to hang it. And that's the reason behind that narrative. Everyone who's been honest with themselves knows that the protest was largely, 80%, 100% peaceful last year until
very organized.
The very end.
Very decent.
Very organized. And you saw videos, you saw pictures of people cleaning up right after they
I even have a friend who was, I could see her. You just see some of these girls leaving their high horses and coming down to the streets to pick the deaths. And after that, I was really, really impressed. And it was really, really emotional.
And that really tells you the mentality of the people who came out to demand that the Special Anti-Robbery Squad, be ended. And of course, that police learns, about the rights of the Nigerian. And, they have complete police reforms. That's really the mentality of those people. Every other person who was a part of the destruction, that we saw eventually after the night of October 20, basically, you can see those clips on your screen. Every other person who came out and, of course, was a part of that destruction was not in any way, a part of the NSAS protest, had no business with the NSAS protest.
I feel like they were planted. I feel like it was a deliberate attempt. You had another camp or you had another group of persons. You want to say those who were against the protests, because it wouldn't really be the same group of persons who went out asking.
There's that narrative. But at the same time, it's still a failure of government. Two things that I'll point out, as a failure of government. The first one is the fact that there's that many jobless people that have nothing to do but destroy because they don't have any. And so that's what they went out to do, to destroy. There's that many jobless people. There's that many violent people. It's a failure of government itself that Lagos is fueled. Because the destruction mostly happened in Lagos.
No,
also.
it wasn't only in Lagos. It wasn't only in Lagos. Across, the country, different states. You need to see the level of
if you're talking about breaking into prisons and some of all of that, yes, absolutely. But it's same thing. Still a failure of government that has led to that many jobless people being readily available to destroy what they didn't build. That's one. And then second, when you declare a curfew, it's not the responsibility of the NSAS protesters to protect Lagos and protect the infrastructure across the state. It is the responsibility of the same police that are paid with taxpayers' money. They're the ones who are meant to ensure that there is peace and there's quiet and there's safety and security during a curfew. So when you declare a curfew and all the policemen go to sleep and go back to their police stations and
True, because I believe that if there's going to be a protest, then you ought to have the police, which is responsible, saddled with the responsibility of ensuring that, there's protection within the civil society. So yes, if the protest was hijacked, where the men of the Nigerian police force is another question you need to ask. And how come we don't have, because for every time you have a protest or people go out to protest, nothing ought to go wrong. Nothing should go wrong with all of that. You ought to have, some level of protection to ensure that the people who are protesting and these peasants or hoodlums, as they would be characterized, don't coming to hijack the entire process. But like you rightly mentioned, I agree that is a total failure on the part of government and those who should do the needful.
Well, once again, it's a really sad discussion, and I'll be honest, it's an emotional discussion, to be honest. There's certain discussions that I honestly wish that I didn't have to, partake in. But these are important discussions, and they must be spoken about for justice, for fairness, for the idea of moving forward and for a better society somehow, some way. We'll take a short break. When we come back, Off the Press begins, where we get to share with you major stories making headlines across Nigeria this morning. And of course, we have an analyst joining us this morning. Stay with us.
Any tangible notification before they ban us.
It's one thing for people to be at your maritime of matters affecting our waters. The master bears responsibility for search and rescue, shipping development, and ship registration.
Poverty, insecurity, and environment is oil-rich region.
Welcome back to The Breakfast on PlusTvAfrica. We will be checking out the top stories making the rounds on our national dailies. And as usual, at the front page of the Daily Sun, 102 million naira compensation to victims. It's on page 4 of the Daily Sun newspaper. Now, looking at another story on the Daily Sun newspaper, you have tension in Southeast over Kanu's trial tomorrow. It's on page 6. Masop wants federal government and flays heavy military presence in region. All of that you find on page 4 and 6 of the Daily Sun newspaper. 2023, Jega predicts doom for APC and PDP. Says parties will soon implode once against direct primaries. That's on page 26. And just before we move away from the Daily Sun newspaper, you also have Nigerian youths have right to demand better future. The governor of Lagos State is quoted on that on page 4. Album, Rivers State top charts in new cases. Details on page 3. Well, that's so much we can take on the Daily Sun newspaper this morning.
All right, let's see what we can find on the Punch newspapers. It says there, NSAS anniversary. Police occupy Lekki toll gate. Others. Activists set for protest. Protesters, security agents may clash as youths insist on commemorative rally. Organizers reject indoor anniversary to converge on the bridges, hold procession as police deploy massive operatives in Federal Capital Territory's strategic locations. Also, El-Rufai hails troops, 50 bandits killed in air-ground operations. Poultry farmers groan as soybean price jumps by 300%. Defense headquarters, 16 roads with 621 billion tag.
To say, and so you're going to have a back and forth with the replies. Nobody in his right mind will say insecurity has reduced. It is politicization of state of insecurity in Nigeria. That's what lawyers are quoted to say. And Buhari yet to understand insecurity challenges. Or Haneze is also quoted on that. These are riders you find on the Daily Independent newspaper this morning. 2022 budget. Federal government to spend 71.6 billion naira on surveillance on Abuja-Kaduna rail line. Others. Transport Ministry to spend 230 million naira on purchase of law books. All of the information you find on page 4-6 of the Daily Independent newspaper. APC Congress, Amechi Abe renew rivalry as parallel ESCO emerges in Rivers. Bayelsa government imposes dusk to dawn curfew on waterways. That's on page 3. Gunmen kill 2 monarchs in Imo State. It's also on page 3. You find Kaduna makes COVID-19 vaccination compulsory for civil servants. It's also on page 3. Youth have many reasons to ask for better life. The governor of Lagos State, Shongo-Olu, is quoted talking about the hashtag EndSARS protest. Well, that's the
Councils can't pay salaries, charges. Security forces kill 74 terrorists in Borno and Kaduna. Ezekiel Nyaitok, good morning once again. I think you can begin with the biggest story that's made headlines, and that is the EndSARS memorial and the events for today. The Lagos State government, of course, the governor is quoted as saying that Nigerians have a right to demand, better governance and whatnot. But it doesn't seem to be what it looks like at the toll gate this morning, and of course, seeing police presence, in certain locations across the country. Quickly share your thoughts.
The very first thing is that we have people, I can never say this enough, who are in government without understanding what governance is. Governance is the people electing you to serve them. So what you do is you bend over backwards and do all you can to see how you can solve the problems of the people, interfacing with the people, seeing them as your anniversary. You do not treat it as if it does not matter. You start to plan for it. You start to engage it. 70s have had our time. When you say the youth are the leaders of tomorrow, I changed that and it went viral in the social media. The youth are not the leaders of tomorrow. Children are leaders of tomorrow. The youth are leaders of today, especially when we have redefined our own youth to go into 40s and even the 50s are trying to also see themselves as youth. I always say this, at 25, I was married. You call me leader of tomorrow. At 30, I had my 3 children. You call me leader of tomorrow. So we must realize that we are tenants. They are the owners of the present Nigeria state. And the least we can do is to treat them as people who are the owners of the state as of today. So I had expected that if we had this mindset 6 months before today, there would have been conversations around, issues about the youth, this happened, and as you're getting to youth, before you even get to 20th of December, which is today, you would have completely, in fact, the federal government would have had a major conversation around the future of the young people, a dialogue. And then when you do that, then the youth don't have any point to prove again. If anything, they will start to show appreciation because they feel that they are a part of the system. But we just have these people who believe in it is the height of
So I want you to, share your views on, the fact that, 1 year later, there still doesn't seem to be a lot changed with regards the attitude of the Nigerian police. Still doesn't seem to be a lot changed, or any justice really to those lives that were lost on this day, and of course in the month of October in 2020.
Lazy youths, these recalcitrant youths, these unproductive, they call them all sorts of names, stigmatize them, just to let them tell them, look, you don't have the space. That is why I keep saying this. The young people had to create another country for themselves that they call Nigeria. I say this all the time. But who really owns Nigeria as of today? So that's the way I look at it. That's why I approach it from because it's an ideological thing. It's a mindset thing. We don't think that the youths own the country. We believe that they are our voice. That is why they are only useful when it comes to times of politics. Oh, okay? And we just treat them, we don't treat them as strategy, as land. So they are just upset. That's why they go out to crush with them. The youth have a reason to the youth. That's where our mindset should be. We cannot just say, okay, come and carry, take. No. But we must begin the process of responsibility transfer. And it's going to be gradual. That's why I also tell the youth, don't want to rush to take. It's something that is not in your hands. You need to be strategic. Right. You need to be extremely careful in the way you get about it. But let us that believe that we have all, set for us, know that the youth is their time.
All right, Mr. Ayatok, let's move on and talk about security now. It's on the Punch this morning. It says El Rufai hails troops as 50 bandits are
to think and interrogate, why do we have insecurity? I think that's a wise thing to do. Why is there insecurity? Where is the wind on their sail? Where is the oxygen that fans their flames? Where is it? Where do they recruit people from? What emboldens them? The day we sit down to have honest conversation on these questions will solve Nigeria's security problem. But we have contractors in power. They would rather budget billions and billions to buy Tucano jets instead of deploying that amount of money to the Northeast. Please tell me one government program as at today. These are the oxygen. I don't care about this country. That is my very honest opinion. The day they do, they will sit down and have honest conversation on education.
Okay.
And I'm not talking of youth empowerment again. That's absolute rubbish. I'm talking youth development. Where you are a journalist, please tell me that government program, that government body that is bringing hope to the young people that they can do that. Who is that government policy that says every young that to make sure that they support you and give you all the necessary, they are fending for their lives, sometimes in the wrong, Professor Jegani's statement. The reason is that at my level, my statements should be guarded. And where I have some levels of reservation, I should be careful not to pass a wrong message. There's issues of faith on one of the most controversial things I've seen in my whole life is this issue of this COVID-19. I don't know what to think again. But all the same, I believe that every responsible government must look at global trends, and in their considered opinion, they think it's important that people should get vaccinated. I think it is important, and but to the extent of making it compulsory, I do not know how that works. But like I said, I am a public commentator, and then government should...
The sit-at-home order for the Southeast tomorrow by the IPOB in respect of the trial. And of course, I think I also saw...
Number two, government is... While people are